Real reversion begins the moment you stop asking, do I agree with this? And start asking, Lord, what are you asking of me? Stop living as if sin is negotiable. This is where reversion gets real, because a lot of people come back to the church while quietly keeping their favorite sins intact. They tell themselves that they're trying. They tell themselves God understands. They tell themselves that they will deal with it later. Listen, later never comes. Let's be honest here. There's a difference between struggling against sin and making peace with it. Some reverts will often normalize the very things that pull them away in the first place: sexual sin, dishonesty, gossip, bitterness, pride, unforgiveness, patterns they excuse because they feel familiar. Grace does not coexist with deliberate rebellion. And that's so hard to hear in a culture that treats morality like a spectrum instead of a call to holiness. Coming back to the church means recovering moral seriousness, not perfection. Again, just seriousness. It means naming sin honestly again, calling things what they are, stopping the mental gymnastics, because when sin stays negotiable, conversion stays stalled. God cannot heal what you refuse to surrender. And reversion doesn't mean you suddenly stop being weak. It means you stop pretending that weakness is obedience. At some point, you have to ask yourself a hard question. What sin are you protecting? Because whatever you refuse to let go of will quietly keep you from going any further. Stop avoiding confession. And for many Catholic reverts, confession is the place where control finally gets challenged. Not because God is harsh, but because confession asks you to stop being your own judge. When you avoid confession, you stay in charge of the narrative. You decide what counts. You decide what is serious. You decide what can wait. And without realizing it, you place yourself in the seat of judgment. Confession gently removes you from that seat. It asks you to bring your sin into the light and not be condemned, be healed. And this is why confession feels so difficult for reverts, because it requires humility instead of explanation. You got to rely on truth instead of management emotionally and spiritually. You got to surrender instead of staying in control. Many people come back to the church longing for peace, but hesitate at the one place where peace is actually given. Confession isn't about informing God of what he already knows. It's about allowing yourself to be restored to grace. When you name your sin aloud, something in you shifts. You stop carrying it alone. You stop defending yourself. You stop negotiating with your conscience, and mercy becomes real. Now, that first confession back is always the hardest, but it's always the most freeing, because when you hear the words of absolution, you're no longer standing before God as your own judge. You're no longer standing in that guilt. You're standing before him as his beloved child. Reversion deepens when you step out of yourself and you step into that mercy. And confession is where that surrender begins.